I can't remember. But if you find out, let me know. Good to know.
I think we'd run out of space on the Zoom account. I'm remembering like in the spring, and there was like this mad dash to like get all the files off.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just throw up my slides. Trying to remember what I'm supposed to be doing right now. Share my screen. All right, if at any point in time you can't see or hear properly, just come off of mute and let me know. So I'm gonna give it a couple more minutes. I see some folks are starting to trickle in. But for the folks who are here, welcome to our third Eco Team meeting of the year. Just going to go through a couple of points of housekeeping. At this point, I'm sure we're all Zoom experts, but please just remember to keep yourself on mute until you're ready to speak. And consider using the raise hand function on Zoom if you would like to speak, or type in the chat as well. Myself and Elliot and Becca will be monitoring all activity from attendees. And so if you have a comment or question you'd like to make, please feel free to use one of those functions. As always, just be courteous and respectful. We've never had a problem on the Eco Team, but saying it for good measure. So on our agenda today, which is a very full agenda, we may not get to everything on here, but we've got a lot of updates to go through, including water quality updates, an incident that happened on the river at the end of August, Starlight Park Phase 2, issues with e-bikes and e-scooters, and an update for the DOT Cross Bronx construction site at Starlight Park. I also have updates on a new air quality monitoring grant, the update to the intermunicipal watershed management plan, and upcoming events and volunteer opportunities, as well as an open discussion time for attendees to ask questions, make suggestions, recommendations, or just bring curiosity or some other topic related to the Bronx River to the table. I'm always going to leave time at the end of the meetings to talk about that stuff, because I do really enjoy feedback from attendees and participants. I think it's important they were engaging the community as much as we can. So we may not get to all the other agenda items, but I'm gonna do my best. Here comes Danny. So before we get started, I always like to start Eco Team meetings with a brief icebreaker. So today, seeing that in my mind, basically summer is over. I kind of feel like summer is done. Meteorological summer ends on September 21st, but in my brain, it ends on Labor Day. So if you want to share very quickly the best vacation you ever took, why? I'll go last. Jen, since you have such fabulous sunglasses on, I'm going to pass it to you.
Sure, I'll go first. My favorite vacation, which wasn't really like a vacation, even though I took a vacation. I'm a Virgo, I'm a workaholic. I volunteered at this nonprofit organization called All Hands and Hearts. They specifically help out places that were hit with natural disasters. And they, are able to fly out volunteers and have them stay. If you're there for 2 weeks, they feed you. And you get 2 days off. And the opportunity was in St. Thomas. So it was because of Hurricane Maria. And it was just like awesome to like be on vacation, but to also give back and then meet people from all different parts of the world. So yeah, I'm excited to do another one of those. Acknowledging it's kind of not like a vacation, but I love those type of vacations, being able to like give back and enjoy your time and really see the island for what it is. Should I pass this to someone?
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, popcorn it.
I will pass it to Rebecca.
Oh no. This is so hard.
Sorry.
Okay, so I think I don't know. I'm like torn between my my childhood vacation spot, but I think the best vacation, I'm a very, very anxious person. And I think the best vacation that I ever took was a couple of years ago. Um, we flew into Dublin and then flew to Portugal. And Dublin is like a super, super rainy place. And we had these like magical, beautiful 2 days of sun. And it just felt like the best place in the world. Um, and then we flew to Portugal, and then I experienced like actual vacation relaxation, Becca, for the first time in my entire life, where I was like, wow, I actually feel chilled. And it was really, really amazing. And I love Portugal. And it was the cheapest, prettiest place I've ever been. That's all. I'll pass it to, let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to look at who else on here. I guess I'll pass it to Daniel.
Hi, sorry, still commuting. Um, Best vacation. Honestly, just riding around on my bike. But if I were to pick an actual destination, I think, yeah, going to Cambodia, seeing Angkor Wat. You know, very mystical and different. And I will pass it to Carolyn.
The best vacation, I was trying to think. We went to Scotland once for a nephew's wedding, and it was on a little island called Gia, and they had the Scottish Ceilidh music. They had a little band there, and it was outside, and it was like other people were saying, it was magical. So that was great. I'll pass it to Alejandra.
Hey guys, best vacation. I'm gonna have to say Hawaii. I went a couple years ago when I was in high school, and it's just kind of amazing to see it. It's one thing to see it in videos or whatnot, but it's another thing to see it in person and get hands on with, you know, or as much hands on as you can get with the wildlife and all that stuff. I'm sorry, on my phone, I have to get a list of names. I'll throw it over to Elliot.
Hi everyone. I would say I was thinking about it just because of like the time of my life that it happened. My favorite vacation had to have been at least so far. Right after undergrad, me and two friends drove across the country, and like just our car broke down in South Dakota. We were stuck out there for a week, and then had to take the train different places. Like it was just kind of an adventure, and for that reason, it was probably my favorite. Soraya?
You pronounced it right, Elliot. Thank you. The best vacation I took, I think it was the last time I visited my family in Ecuador. We went for New Year's, which is a very big Ecuadorian type of holiday. We set effigies on fire by the beach, and we just literally burn things in massive piles and like drink and dance all night. So that was really nice to do on New Year's. And that was the first time I also fished and gutted a fish. So it was very special for me.
Mhm.
I'll pass it off to Roseanne.
Good evening. I would say my vacations they're few and far between. And I think probably the memory of the alleged vacation would be something in the Pine Barrens of LA around Pasadena, Knott's Berry Farm, some distant family that I'm not really close with. Just seeing kind of the California natural areas would probably be the best memory of a vacation. Let's see, pass it to, let me find out who's our people. Who are the people? Pass it to Daniel Reynolds.
So
I think I
Daniel,
already went. Yep.
yeah,
Go ahead.
am I the only one left? Or are there other people who still haven't gone? I feel like that might be everybody, but I can't see the participant list right now. Soraya, Roseanne, Becca. Yep, okay, it's me. What was my best vacation? That would have been just after I was finished my seasonal work as a crew member at the Bronx River Alliance back in 2018. My best friend and I, she's half Irish and I'm half English, and we have family all across the UK. And so what we did was we spent 3 weeks bouncing from one family member's house or apartment to the next, through Ireland, through Wales and England. And it was absolutely incredible. So yeah, it was probably my best vacation ever, I think. Definitely the most unique vacation. Yeah, so thank you all for sharing. Sorry that summer's over. It's my favorite season of the year. And so I'm going to mourn it for months and months until the spring comes. But anyway, why don't we get started with the agenda? I think the first thing that we have is water quality updates. And again, if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to use one of Zoom's features to let us know, and then we can hear your comment or question. So far this year, this is Enterococcus results from the full length of the Bronx River. It's been a very dry summer. So last year, this graph looked a little bit different. Rainfall was much, much higher last year. And so the graph responds differently. So what we're seeing here is actually lower levels of Enterococcus than the typical Bronx River summer, which is interesting. And in particular, we should not be seeing changes in bacteria levels in response to rainfall in Westchester County, because Westchester County's sewer system is not designed to respond to environmental conditions in the same way that New York City's sewer system is, right? So you would expect higher levels of rainfall in the Bronx because the Bronx's sewer system is connected to the storm system. So when it storms, the sewer gets overwhelmed with the volume of water and releases through CSOs, right? And we know that we have lots of CSOs or combined sewer outfalls all along the Bronx River and throughout New York City. In Westchester County, we're not supposed to have this. So why do we see elevated levels of sewage when we have high rainfall? You can see that on June 9th, it actually rained on us on that day while we were collecting samples. We have really, really elevated levels throughout Westchester County, actually the highest we've recorded this season. Doesn't really make sense, but this is one of the things that we're trying to investigate as we're going through these year after year, these studies. Westchester County is aware of this. They've actually targeted some of the outfalls in the past. They have a whole heap of new outfalls to be targeting. In particular, we're concerned about the outfalls around White Plains. They seem to be getting worse. They seem to be giving off more sewage every year. You can't really tell from this graph, but there is a spike there above White Plains. So even during dry weather, the storm drains in White Plains are still giving out sewage. And so I'm not entirely sure what's happening, but we will be talking to elected officials soon. And I'll get more into how we've been bringing in municipalities to the table later on in the meeting. We are currently embarking on what's called the targeted outfall study. And so what's been different from previous years is that we're actually using new measuring techniques to actually monitor for detergents and nutrients at specific outfalls. And so where we're finding high bacteria levels, if we're also finding elevated levels of like detergents, right? So things that might come from a washing machine or your kitchen sink or something like that. Then we know that these pipes are somehow connected to people's homes and businesses, and that's totally unacceptable. Basically a blatant violation of the Clean Water Act. But it does help us to figure out which pipes need special attention, right? And so what we're doing, these are actually two pipes in White Plains. This was a beautiful sunny day, as you can kind of tell from the pictures, and they were dribbling weird liquid into the river. That liquid ended up being very high in fecal bacteria. So I'm convinced that these are pipes that are somehow connected to White Plains sanitary sewer system. So we're going to be doing this throughout the watershed. Hopefully this is a model to go forward, and that the Bronx River Alliance will adopt this until eventually every pipe is fixed. That is the goal one day. And the river no longer has sewage, at least up in Westchester County, to deal with. But that's something new that we're going to be doing, that we're going to be completing in 2022. And we should have those results ready, hopefully by our final eco team meeting of the year, which will be in December. I'm just going to pause for questions or comments. And you have to excuse me, I do have a little bit of a cold right now.
I do have a quick question, Christian. This is Elliot.
Yep.
So these are all not like legal connections, right? So these, because when you look up like on the state CSO map, nothing comes up north of here.
Yeah.
Okay. But
Yeah.
Westchester has admitted to the fact that they have illegal connections.
They're well aware that
Okay.
sometimes it's apartment buildings that illegally dig connections into storm drains, but they're so hard to track down. You can really only do it by sticking a camera up the pipe.
Yeah.
And looking for a connection that's not on a blueprint. And so it's time consuming. It takes a lot of hours, contracted hours. So it's expensive to do this, but it's really, really important to do. And we've had success stories in the past. We've heard from nearby watersheds, like the Sawmill River near Yonkers, actually in the town of Ardsley. They had some success with reducing sewer levels using similar techniques. So we're hoping for, good things to happen on the Bronx River in the future. If we continue with Project Waste, again, another good success story in terms of volunteer engagement. Volunteers really like Project Waste. We actually had the press come out to, I think, one of our events this year, which was very cool. They've been finding very similar things that we found in previous years, which is that styrofoam continues to dominate what is coming downstream. For those of you who are less familiar with how Project Waste works, the Bronx River Alliance maintains a trash boom, which is basically like a very large pool noodle that stretches across the channel and catches anything moving down the surface of the river. And so this one is located right at the county border. And so we're catching things that are coming downstream from Westchester County and the tiniest sliver of the Bronx. But it's really mostly Westchester's garbage. And for years, it's been dominated by styrofoam. Actually, some years it's above 70% styrofoam. And then it's always followed by single-use plastic items like forks and paper, plastic cups and straws and things like that. So we're not seeing a reduction in styrofoam, although styrofoam bans have gone into effect in New York City and Westchester County. They were relaxed a little bit because of the pandemic. What we are seeing a reduction in is actually plastic bags. We have not been seeing as many plastic bags turn up during Project Waste events as in previous years. And that was an item that was banned, at least in New York City. And I'm not sure about in Westchester. But that's a good thing, right? Because plastic bags in particular are quite nasty for wildlife. We have found things tangled up in bags in the past. And so this is one small step in the right direction. But still, we have a lot of work to do. The volume and the quantity of trash coming downstream does not seem to be slowing down very much at all. And so this could be related to another problem that Westchester County officials have admitted, which is that they are not making sure that their storm drains have devices in front of them that catch floatable litter. And they're aware of this, and they admitted that they just don't have the capacity to prioritize repairing these drains. And so storm drains in Westchester County are allowing garbage from the sidewalk to just kind of flow unimpeded directly into the river. So we're not expecting this problem to go away anytime soon. What we are hoping to do is to maintain the trash boom as much as we can, because it's one level of protection that the river has, at least in the Bronx, to stop things from moving downstream. And we know the boom has some protection because when it's not in place, the lowermost boom on the river that's maintained by the city of New York actually gets more garbage in it. And so they've actually reached out to us in the past to ask, hey, is your boom in place? Because we're seeing an influx of garbage. And it was actually during a time when our boom was not stretched across the river and was not catching things. So our boom is protecting the river to some degree from floatable waste. So as much as we can, we try to clean it up every 2 weeks. This is an open volunteer opportunity, free for all ages. We provide all materials, and so if you're interested in getting involved, you can please email me. Any questions about this? I'm going to blaze through the next one as much as I can. We have nearly completed our 4th year of participation in the Unified Water Study. So this is a EPA-funded program that is led by Save the Sound. They're a partner based in, we just moved to Larchmont on the Merrimack. But basically what this does is it unifies every embayment around the Long Island Sound. So from New London, Connecticut, all the way down to the Bronx, all the way east to Port Jefferson and Long Island and the North Shore. I think at this point, it's close to 30 organizations that are participating in the study, and we're all doing the same thing, which is measuring the water quality out in the Long Island Sound, particularly looking at dissolved oxygen levels and chlorophyll. And so these are my 2 interns, as well as Mike Mendez, on a really beautiful morning in July out in the East River collecting samples. And the other 2 pictures on the right actually show an algal bloom. And so this is the 3rd year that we're noticing really, really elevated levels of chlorophyll. It's a brown algae. And so in Florida, you might call this a red tide, although our algae is not particularly toxic. And so it's not harmful to come to contact with this. And the algae itself doesn't kill wildlife, but it does lead to really, really low dissolved oxygen levels, as algal blooms tend to do. And so during this peak this year, we did notice a lot of Atlantic menhaden floating dead in the mouth of the Bronx River. And I think we've recorded some of the highest chlorophyll levels that we've ever seen in the river. So this coffee color only happens in the summer, right? The river doesn't really look like this at other times of year. It's still a funny color sometimes, but it's not this color. This is particular to the summer. So we're convinced that this is due to eutrophication. That means that a lot of nutrients like fertilizer, right? People put fertilizer on their lawns and stuff. When that washes into the river, it creates these algal blooms. And so we've just got too many nutrients coming into the Bronx River. And that's what's causing these problems. It usually clears up around November. So we'll see. Any questions on this? They will publish these results as soon as they clean up the data, and usually that's available the following year. So I will have last year's data in hand very soon, and I can send that out if people are interested in looking at that. All right, Elliot, I think I'm gonna pass this to you because you have a nice slideshow that's ready to go. So whenever you're ready.
Okay, so it's not pretty, but it is informative, I think. We'll see. You can hear me, right? Just checking.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, cool. So for those of you that don't know, we experienced a fish kill of sorts here on the Bronx River, mainly concentrated, or what, the evidence of it was concentrated here at the Botanical Garden just north of the dam, of Stone Mill Dam here. And so this presentation, I'm just going to go over kind of just what we found so far and kind of where we're at currently. So let me see if this will advance. It won't. There we go. So first thing, I'm just going to go over some of so we have a USGS gauge located just north of the Stone Mill Dam here, which was collecting data continuously, and we're lucky because it did show some of this event on its data. So the first thing I'll show is gauge height, and so this is just essentially height of the water level there. It's kind of the same kind of graph that you would see for discharge. And if you look, this is the event that we're talking about. A relatively small rain event occurred on the night of October 30th into the morning of October 31st. And this orange line
Sorry,
here,
I think you mean August.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes, August 30th.
You're
August
clairvoyant.
31st. Huh? Yeah.
You're clairvoyant.
I hope not. We all better be watching out on Halloween then. All right, so the orange line is this year, And this is all from the USGS, their online service. And then that darker line in the background, that thinner line, is last year. And so you can see, like Christian was saying, in general, we've received a lot less rainfall this year, and our levels in general were much lower. So we had a small rain event on the 30th. And then same deal when we're looking at water temperature. You can see that kind of respond as well. So you can see a dip in our water temperatures, and you can see that we had kind of a little bit higher water temperatures than last year previously, so before that storm, but not too much. It wasn't that significant. But you do see a drop there at the same time with that influx of water. And then the other thing that we'll see here is a huge dip in dissolved oxygen. And so this is really the reason, right? So we all know that this is the reason why the fish died. This is a condition called hypoxia, which is really just low oxygen levels for many of the same reasons that Christian was just talking about in regards to potential fish kills or eutrophication in the sound. If you look at this graph on the right, the orange line is dissolved oxygen in 2022. And then 2021 is that darker line in the background. And so you can see we're significantly lower. The EPA has a threshold of 2 to 3 milligrams per liter as being the point in which you'll see a fish kill. And then so you can see on the 31st, following that brief storm event, we dropped way below that. And I think the level was like 0.03 milligrams per liter or something like that. And you see it kind of flatlines for a little while and then slowly works its way back up. Yep, so just more information about kind of hypoxia, but they're saying some of the reasons that this could occur, and this is all just taken from the EPA, is either fertilizers from suburban or agricultural areas, erosion of soil nutrients, discharge of sewage, or of course atmospheric deposition, but I don't think that was the reason. And so just to show you kind of, so on the 31st, what happened was we had a crew working in the river that was removing some debris from a tree that had fallen over the winter. And so they were there the day before and noticed, everything was alive and healthy. And then on the 31st identified that there were fish acting weird. And so I'll start with this video in the middle. This is kind of what we were seeing, which is just fish that had swam up onto the banks kind of, and we're still alive barely, but we're fighting to kind of get out of the water. And the water was this like dark murky color. And here you can see this fish kind of like gulping for air at the surface. And you'll see the same thing here in this video on the right. It's hard to tell. I don't know how well this is coming through, but this is a bullhead catfish on the right, again, gulping at the surface for air. And in the first video, we saw a sunfish and a couple of darters. And then this video on the left is of the dam, so of the waterfall there on this day. So very murky color water. And you can see it's really frothy, so it's foaming up a lot, which is something that a lot of people raise concern about. So that was the first day, and I'll go through the timeline of what we did when we noticed all of this. But getting into the second day, so the day following this, we came back, and that's when the fish kill kind of really was evident, right? So things that were struggling were now all dead, and this is everything from all different types of sunfish to darters to suckers to carp to catfish. And these are just all photos of what it looked like down here at the garden. And so, yeah, and you can see, all different types of fish. So brief run through of timeline. So on the first day that we noticed it, we reached out to pretty much everyone just because we were really concerned about what might have been happening on the river. Even our staff were concerned as to whether or not they should be in the water, which is what, spurred a lot of this as well. And so DEC, Bronx River Alliance, the zoo, just so they were aware, FDNY, NYPD, and DEP in the city. We also collected water samples and fish samples. Water samples were put in a fridge. Fish samples were frozen for any fish that had died on that day. The following day, we were notified by Bronx River Alliance that the fish kill was identified even further north, up to 233rd Street. this is the day that we know that we identified significant mortality of fish throughout our stretch of the river. We even reached out to even more stakeholders, including Riverkeeper and the urban park rangers. And surprisingly, less than 24 hours from when we first identified this. So on, I don't know if I put this here, but on the 31st, we notified DEC immediately by filing a report. And so in less than 24 hours of filing that report, a DEC conservation officer visited the garden to collect additional samples and collect the samples that we had taken. And then that was also at the point where a number of New York City Parks Department personnel were brought into the conversation. That's when we were made aware of the USGS data that I just showed you and the significant drop in dissolved oxygen. And then the following day, Parks got back to us, identifying that there were additional fish found dead up between 230th Street and 233rd Street. And this is when people started pointing out that there is a construction site up by 233rd Street for DOT that people had concerns about. And then on the 6th is when DEC reached back out to me, which was very disheartening. And they pretty much said that just even though they collected a bunch of samples, even though they took a lot of our samples, they couldn't test any of it and they weren't going to test any of it. And that they would not be able to identify a source because that's just, is very difficult to do. And so that's where they pretty much said that there's nothing they can do but to call them again if it happens again. And so Bronx River Alliance also reached out to DEC as well, in addition to us. And so to give you an idea of like potential next steps, so we still have water samples and fish samples here at the garden. Luckily, we didn't give everything to DEC. So we're trying to identify who else to work with to see if we can understand kind of why this may have occurred. Right now, the most recent person I've been talking to is this Guy Foster at USGS. He's the head of the Water Quality Networks and Research section at the Water Science Center, which is something I didn't know existed. But what's interesting is Guy and this professor Peter at Yale University, who I spoke to about this, both of them initially, their first response is, is there any type of organic material or dissolve, a source of or organic material that may have run off after that storm event directly into the water body, resulting in low dissolved oxygen levels. And I've even been told that the frothiness of the water at the base of the dam on that first day is indicative of high dissolved dissolved organic carbon or something like that. So not necessarily, like a soap or something, which we were thinking about initially. It was told to me that this also, could have been that the same thing that would happen for, high nutrient runoff could be something that started in like a CSO or something like that. So, it's interesting what Christian said earlier, and, it's who knows if it's connected. It was kind of a bunch of things that led to it. Like I said, we had low water levels, high water temperatures, in addition to whatever may have occurred. So, if we find out anything more, we'll let you know. And a number of us on this call are working on this. So I'll stop it there. That's all I got. Kind of brief overview, but let me know if you have any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Elliot. And thank you for listing the different agents.
Sorry, I was muted. Say that again.
I was just saying thank you, and thank you for listing out who you've reached out to. I appreciate how comprehensive your documenting of this incident has been.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks. I also wanted to jump in and say, if you guys ever notice anything weird, call me immediately. Like, text me, call all my cell phones, email me, high importance, just bombard me, and I can help mobilize DEC. I know we have specific reporting protocols that we've found out through the years do not work for reporting fish kills. So we've worked with them to get protocols down. I'll send that to you guys afterwards. I mean, there are always times in which they break. That always happens, but the thing that I have learned over the course of the last several years, which is super ridiculous and disheartening, but that calling in a spill to DEC does not flag anything to their fisheries folks. It's super weird. Sometimes they occur in like the middle of a salt marsh, for example. That's actually like usually the most regular one is somebody's just like dumped something into the wetland directly. This is like classic for West Shore of Staten Island, like a construction truck or tanker just like backs up and drops everything. And so it doesn't necessarily trigger somebody to respond for a fish kill. And I know it's like super frustrating to hear the 24-hour window, but we have the same for stocking. Like we have to go out and make sure we get samples collected. When we had, for those who aren't aware for alewife, we had to do disease monitoring if we had any mortality, because alewife in upstate lakes are invasive. And so if we noticed any mortality, post-trucking stocking mortality, we had to collect, like go through the super rigorous protocol to collect fish samples to have them analyzed for disease. And so it's like super huge pain in the ass, but like if there is a slight delay, it can make their sample, like there's too much muddying the waters, that's a bad turn of phrase for this, but like too much in their sample that they have a really hard time figuring out anything. So yeah, feel free just to like seriously bombard me. I will help, and if I can't help, I will like delegate people to get out and help. It's super depressing, and particularly of this scale. Full disclosure too, I also wanted to hear from you guys and figure out a little bit more. I'm gonna call state DOT tomorrow and just casually say, hey, did you see anything? And see what response I get. We have a couple of folks that we're working with for the dredge project at 233rd that's supposed to start mobilizing tomorrow. So I have it's a good opportunity to say that. But yeah, it's hard. As far as whether or not I like the organic matter sounds interesting to me. I feel like it could be anything, but I think it would be, I don't know, I feel like hearing something from state DOT to say, oh yeah, we noticed that too, would be interesting to see if it's coming from Westchester, or if it was coming from within, potentially from within the city itself. But all to say, like, yeah, thanks Elliot for diving into this and tracking it and taking photos and everything. And please feel free to literally torture us with it too, and call all hands on deck, because we can try to help.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. I mean, I'm always looking at the river every day, at least on our stretch. So if we see anything, we'll definitely let you know. I mean, the sad thing about this is that everyone I've spoken to is like, oh, I've been looking at the Bronx River for 20 to 30 years, and I've never, ever seen this in this stretch. That's what I keep hearing. And like the amount of visitors that came up to me, either the first day or the second day, that were like, I've been I grew up in this area my whole life. I've been coming here my whole life. We used to swim in the river when I was a kid. I've never seen the river this color. Like at least 3 people within like a 5-hour span came up and told me that, which is wild, because I didn't even notice it as that strange, right? Like I was like, oh, it's just kind of muddy, like what it looks like after it rains. So it's yeah, definitely interesting. I would love to get to the bottom of it. And I also, it's like, it is hard to identify where it's coming from, but I would also love to know, is this like within the realm of possibility of a natural occurrence, just because of our significant drought in situations that we're already in, or do we really need to be looking for some type of like point source? And so if you know of anything that can be done with these water samples I got in a fridge, or dead fish in a freezer, let me know.
Quick question, actually. So what parameters did you guys want to get tested? Like, do you know what you were looking for, or was this going to be each one of the general kind of summary of the water?
That's part of the help that I need is like, what do we need to get tested? What should we be looking for? Is kind of the questions I'm asking people now. Because I think that is what determines the, where we send it.
Gotcha. So I'm definitely not like, I mean, I don't have a degree yet, but I'm in school for wildlife management. So if you give me like a comprehensive list, I might be able to talk to some like just anything, any type of species, what the weather was like a couple days before, things going on in the area, just general observations that you guys noticed. I can maybe poke around and ask some of my professors because a lot of them are, this is like what they do. They have doctorates and whatnot in biology, specializing, excuse me, in different species. So I have a professor I know that does fish and management for fish and has worked with, I believe, the DEC. But I definitely do have a lot of like resources here up at school. If you guys want to send me some stuff and I can poke around.
Yeah,
Awesome. Yeah.
great. The only thing I can think of would be like surfactants, like something that would make the water frothy, like a bubble bath. But I don't know where that would have come from.
Do you know, is there a time frame on when you can test for like fecal coliform or something like that?
Yeah,
Like, vary over time.
it's
Would
pretty
it-
short. Yeah, it's pretty short. It's a small window. It's like even smaller than the 24-hour window.
See, that's the thing. So DEC, what they told me, which was really infuriating, was like, you know, essentially they need to collect the water sample, but also at the same time, if I call them, they will not come out to collect the water sample because they can't come at a moment's notice. And then instead that I should reach out to DEP because they won't reach out to DEP because they don't have a good relationship with DEP. That's literally what they told me. And we did reach out to DEP on the day of, our head of security did, and DEP told us to reach out to DEC. So, it's rough. Yeah. All right, I'm done.
No, I mean, it's one of those things where the agencies either just don't want to take up any responsibility because it does take a lot of time and effort to do these things. Or, I mean, if it's state DOT that's responsible. I do want to say that we have a little bit of a sampling bias because I don't know how many folks went north of the border into Westchester County. I think a lot of folks just stopped at 233rd Street looking for the dead fish. I could say that there were fish that were alive as far north as like Eastchester, right? So I did see live fish in Westchester the following day. And I did test for fecal bacteria that following day, and I didn't see anything too untoward. So I don't know. But these pictures were taken by George Jackman from Riverkeeper. He was kind enough to actually drive down to the state DOT construction site and take these pictures. He's got big boring machines right there impacting the storm drains. That's a storm drain there with something tied around it to prevent things from getting into it, but we don't know what state it's in. So who knows, right? Like I want to say right now that state DOT is our primary suspect, but we don't have any evidence at all to really implicate them. So we're kind of stuck.
Yeah,
Right?
and I'll also add that we're double checking what their permit status is. If they're adding new outfalls, they should have speedies permits and stuff like that. We've had a hard time thus far finding records of that, but I can't imagine that they're adding outfalls. The other thing that, I mean, the DEP, DEC thing, I can kind of sort of believe because there are so many changes happening right now at the local level, where DEP does have more local laws and is technically supposed to be subsuming some of those responsibilities that supersede DEC. And knowing both agencies, I can totally see like, no, I think that's them. I thought that was supposed to be them. It's not an excuse, but I can totally see that happening. I think it is good longer term though that there will be more local oversight. But state DOT also has weird things where they bypass a lot of standard permitting requirements because it's health and safety. and they are a state agency, and that has always eluded me. So it's hard. Basically, I'm just saying too, it is kind of hard to track some of the work that they do because it is under that lens, I should say, and there's less that they have to actually document and get approvals for.
Yeah.
Which is really frustrating.
Well, we learned
So
that
I'll report-
firsthand with the Starlight Park incident where they just
Yeah.
dumped all the material in the river. We're like, yeah, no, we were totally allowed to do that. What are you talking about? And we're like, no, you were not. There's no way in hell you were able to do that. I don't know. Maybe they were, right? We don't really know what happened exactly.
No, DEC issued a violation.
They did, but even DEC, right, was very hush hush about that too.
Yeah.
And they really didn't tell us very much about what was violated, right? We don't know what exactly was violated. And
Yeah.
we don't know still what remediation they're being required to do. So
Yeah. I was told we were supposed to hear an update, but I haven't heard anything formal. So but yeah, I'll let you know what we can dig out. I haven't directly called the EC yet. I kind of wanted to see what I could dig up ahead of time. But it's, yeah, I've seen fish kills at other lakes and stuff like that, and even lakes that are more, slower moving, more pounded, and I've never seen anything like this.
do you have any idea how long it might take these populations to rebound?
No, but I can ask around.
That's my concern right now, is that I don't know if this was like a full depletion, like if it really wiped out an entire population of fish, but even if it came close, like how long is it going to take for hundreds of sunfish to come back and hundreds of suckers and darters to come back? Like other animals in the ecosystem will be depending on these fish for their roles in the ecosystem, and they're not there, right? So what is this ripple effect that we're going to see through the Bronx River's ecosystem in the next year or two?
Yeah.
Is there any past data on the populations on these fish? Like, has there been any studies that kind of give a general idea of how many of these fish were living there consistently?
Not for a long time, I don't think.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I think the last information we have is any electroshocking that DEC would have done in the botanical garden. But even then, I'm not sure if that's upstream or downstream of the dam.
Yeah.
Rip.
Likely downstream, I'm sure.
Yeah.
One thing I'll add too, we only have like dissolved oxygen data going back about like a year and a half, I think. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I was looking it up, at least on the USGS site. So they have discharge and gauge height, which I think they've been collecting for like years, maybe 10 years now or something like that. But DO we only have for about a year, and there's only one other occurrence in the last year and a half where you see that similar pattern with very significant drop, but the oxygen levels to start were higher, so it didn't cross that 2 milligrams per liter or whatever threshold. But it'd be interesting if anyone, I'll let you know. I'll have to look it back. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, we can look it up too, but I can also reach out to we know the USGS folks who monitor that gauge and run it. So we can also reach out to them and figure out.
So they're aware. I reached out to them. That's how I got in contact with this guy Foster, who is like their head water quality person for the state. And so he just recently emailed me at the end of the day on Friday. So we just started interacting, but I'll let you know. They
should have older DO data than that.
Okay.
They might not host it on the website though, but if you can ask if they have older records, we can dig into it too.
Okay. It would just be interesting to see if this is like something that's just now occurring, this type of like significant drop, or if that's just a cyclical thing that's always been happening. We just happen to have a weird, really low DO level because we had low water and high temperatures for a long period of time. So anyway.
Yeah, I do want to move on, but just last thing on this topic is that specific stream gauge managed by USGS is running out of funding and is supposed to be removed in about a year. So if this is a way for us to leverage some kind of support to keep it in place, maybe we should consider using it, because we really don't want to lose that gauge, but we're supposed to be losing it.
What support does it need?
I don't know.
I do. Give me a second. It's, I think, $40,000 a year.
Well,
It's
I don't
not
think the garden's
nothing.
gonna
Maybe
cost
it's
40,000 a year, but
maybe it's $20,000 a year. I'll find it in just a minute. I do know this because I put together a funding request recently for it.
Got it.
well, if you can let me know, just in general, I know that we would be interested as an institution in making sure that it's still there. Now, I can't make any commitments for
We would too.
but like if that means we have to talk to people, you know what I mean? Then we'll talk to people. So
Yeah, we really can't afford to lose that gauge. It's just too important. All right, I guess that's enough about dead fish and interagency shenanigans. What else do we got here? So, oh, perfect. So I'll just really quickly touch on this, the DOT Cross Bronx site. So for folks who maybe don't know, in March of this year, let me back up a little bit. DOT has been working in this site since, is it late 2020 or early 2021? They tore down the on-ramp to the Cross Bronx because it was falling apart and they needed to replace it. In the process of doing this, in March of this year, they dumped a bunch of debris directly into the middle of the Bronx River, which we consider a blatant violation of a lot of different environmental laws. Also is incredibly unsafe, really bad for the ecosystem. We complained, we rang a lot of alarm bells, DEC came out, they issued some kind of violation to DOT. We don't exactly know what was violated, but after that had happened, a bunch of different safety barriers and things were set up at this site, including some barriers to prevent sediment from running into the water. They put up actual booms in the water that were useful, as opposed to the ones that had been there before that were like mostly submerged and doing nothing. And they increased park safety by introducing flaggers and things, so that people who are walking through the park actually could be stopped or told to turn around in case conditions were unsafe, whereas prior to that, it was kind of a free-for-all. So good things did happen from this. They're kind of in the final stretch. This is the on-ramp being put in place now. So this needs to be outfitted, obviously, with concrete and drainage and different kinds of things, but it's moving quickly. And we know that there's some kind of remediation project that DOT is being required to conduct following whatever it was that they violated earlier this year. So we're going to call this a mild success story. We hope that it's some kind of stormwater management or erosion control or something that benefits the channel itself. I guess we'll have to find out. But hopefully we'll have an update maybe by our final eco team meeting of the year. All that is to say that using the community to make a lot of noise actually did make something happen, right? So we know that this is an important channel that we can call on to actually make good things happen in the community and for the Bronx River. So any questions on that? Okay. I know we're really coming up on time here. So really quickly, Starlight Park Phase 2. This is the final piece of Starlight Park that is yet to be opened. Starlight Park has been opening up in sections. Where our office is located is actually one of the sections that is opened many years ago. This final piece is, I think, one of the most intriguing because it features a lot of green infrastructure features, a really unique landscape. So it does kind of work with the natural topography of the Bronx River. So this part of the park is very sloped. It's got these nice steep curving walkways, and there's a dog park, and there's rain gardens, and there's water features. And this opening date has been pushed back. I don't know if anybody remembers how many times this has been pushed back. It was supposed to have opened in August, then it was supposed to have opened in September, then it was supposed to have opened in October, and now I think it's been pushed back into November. We'll see. I have no idea what's going on. Itching to actually have this open to the public because it's a beautiful space. I've walked through it, and it is really, when it opens, it's going to be a fantastic place for all the community, right? Dog walkers, people who want to recreate, people who just want to sit and enjoy the view. It's really beautiful. And it's supposed to be, protecting the Bronx River because of these green infrastructure features. I don't know, Becca, if you have any more information on some of the design elements there, but all that to say, we're looking forward to this opening as soon as possible.
Ditto. I'll be back on the site, I think, in a week. We can provide a map with a little bit more of the design elements later on. Sorry, I was out late last week and did not get a chance to do any preparations. But there's some tidal wetlands along the site that we're hoping are going to do well. I am a little skeptical just because of the context and the condition, context of the river. And then there are a lot of like really nice slopes, native plantings throughout. And then there's a couple of kind of like green infrastructure, ponds and swales and stuff. But I've walked along it too. It's really, really great. I'm totally excited to see it open. I'm terrified for maintenance. But it's going to be really, it's so beautiful right now and there's so much of it.
No.
But it's really cool. It's really, really great.
Yeah. All right, any other questions or comments? I'm going to try to blaze through these next agenda items as much as I can. So e-bikes, e-scooters, and other rideshare equipment. This is an epidemic on the river now. Is Sid on the call?
Hey.
Hello, Sid. Welcome to the Eco Team meeting. Thanks
How's
for
it
joining
going?
us. Good, how are you?
Not bad. I'm Sid. I'm the Greenway coordinator. I've met one of you before, and the rest I haven't met. Nice to meet you. So basically, I have a background in ecology, so all this jargon, I will understand it if you use it. So go for it. Basically, we've been finding a lot of rideshare vehicles, as you can see in this image on the screen, in and around the Bronx River. This is under the 174th Street Bridge. Thank you, Jen, I think, who was also on the call for taking that picture and honestly getting the ball rolling on this little project. But Jen, she does pitch in to pick up on the Bronx River every Monday, and she's been noticing increasing quantities of rideshare vehicles in and around the river. 21 total, I think, is the number here in this picture under the 174th Street Bridge at one time. And most commonly, you can see there are city bikes and a whole bunch of those green Lime scooters. So we met with DOT on Friday, the 9th, to talk about what we can do and what's going on. And it's important to acknowledge that this is all these ride shares going on in the Bronx right now are pilot programs. So they're still ironing out a lot of the details. So when they hear from us, it's actually really great because they can't be everywhere at once. They can't, so they're still ironing out how exactly they're going to deal with abandoned bike recovery. And at the moment, these rideshare companies do have people going around and looking for, abandoned bikes, but they're not going to be driving into parks or up against the Bronx River to come collect them out. So luckily for us, Jesse from DOT has told us that it is their job, the rideshare company's job, to go into parks and into the river and get these out, which is great news for us because we don't, every Monday doing this, it's not necessarily a sustainable use of resources for us. And it is a drain on their resources as well. People throwing bikes in the river. So the good news is there is a protocol for reaching out to DOT and getting these bikes out of the river through Jesse's connections. And then we also talked about some potential future programs to kind of mitigate this from happening in the first place. And those are a lot more up in the air. For example, like expanding the reach of the pilot programs. For the current rideshare area for the Lime scooters is actually the western border is actually the Bronx River. So something that we're theorizing is that people will ride up to the border and kind of not abandon, but park their rideshare vehicles either in the park or near the park. And then at night, kids, teens are walking around and checking them in. So the theory is that, yeah, they're just there at night. And because people can't park them farther away to the west, there's just a lot more nearby. And because of that, they get thrown in. So that is a potential solution, as well as location or discounted returns based on returning these bike shares to like service stations or something in the future. But for now, the process is to report them to Jesse. For Bronx River Alliance employees can report them to Jesse, and people who are not part of the Bronx River Alliance can report them through 311. Jen and I are working on a little bit of a flyer right now that'll have the protocol and so that the public can use it and report all these abandoned scooters. And hopefully we start to see some changes, and hopefully we start to see less of these in the river. It'd be really great. Something we did have questions about that we didn't really have the resources to find was the effect of these lithium ion batteries on the river. So I just want to kind of open that up and ask about that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sid, for the presentation and the information. I don't know exactly how much leaching happens, how long a battery has to be in water to actually leach chemicals, but definitely a concern. We have not noticed like extra dead fish around like a bunch of things being dumped in the water, but that may not be a good proxy, right, for understanding what's happening here. But if anyone knows of any studies of this that could apply here, it would be very helpful.
I don't know of any studies, just want to acknowledge that we've seen it all along the river. Like I remember, Christian, we were doing a Project Waste up at Muskrat, 233rd, and we were taking limes out. The Bronx River Forest, Fort Knox, Starlight Park, you name it. We've seen this problem like in the river and also in the parks. Just want to put it out there, like if you see them in the river or you see them in the parks, like parks in the parks, the link that Renel's put in the chat is the way you can like let DOT know, and they'll let like the e-scooter company know to come pick up their stuff. But yeah, it's been a problem. I'm sure you guys probably seen the same type of problem. It's disheartening. And I always like to say, like, back in the day, we used to see cars in the river, but the times have changed. So now we see like e-scooters in the river.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a shame because it's a good resource. Like it's a very helpful way to actually get around and commute. It is pulling people away from cars, right? And so this is probably a solution in some way to reduce, our usage of cars and our carbon footprints. But at the same time, there's a lot of bad actors in the Bronx who are ruining this for everybody. And it really sucks. It really does.
And it sucks too, because we no longer see rebels in the Bronx River because they kind of taken rebel out of the Bronx. So those are like two extremes. Like if they were to take this resource away where a lot of people need it, they won't end up in the river. So we're trying to figure out like that middle, like having this, but also like reducing the numbers that we see in the river.
Yeah.
Quick question. Do they currently on those apps have any like areas that are prohibited to park that are within the boundary of like serviced area?
Yeah, so this had come up recently. In other countries, I've used these in France, and there are times where the wheels lock, right? Like if you go into a restricted area that's like geo-fenced, you like pass over a threshold, like an imaginary threshold, and the wheels like lock. You can't actually use the scooter anymore. I don't know that is working as well here in the city, right? Because obviously people are still able to get right up to the river. There are ways that the scooter slows down. So if it recognizes that you're in a place that you're not supposed to be moving quickly, it will reduce your speed and you like crawl, but it doesn't stop. So that's like one of our recommendations, to actually like lock the wheels and prevent you from moving the scooter at all. if you're getting too close to the river, for example.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I'm sure that this must be seen in other areas of the city.
Yeah,
Aside from, just
Yeah.
thinking like
people are
Kiwanis
seeing.
or like Newtown Creek or something.
Yeah, I have a friend who works at Jamaica Bay, and they have a problem down there too.
Yeah.
I think there are areas within the service areas that are blocked off as well, like parks. And specifically, Christian, the speed limit on a lot of these scooters is like 15, 20 miles per hour, but they're programmed to go to 10 miles per hour in the park. So there are some geo fencing features in there that I think could be expanded upon, but a big concern is safety. People don't, DOT doesn't necessarily want these scooters locking up while people are going 15 miles per hour and just coming to a halt. But I'm sure there's a better in between than what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, and I don't think it would be rocket science to design a program that would slow you down to zero, not go from 15 to zero, send you off the handlebars and flying off into a bunch of people in the park. But I'm sure there's a solution that would help this. But I think it's going to take us reporting this and improving our relationship with them and giving them feedback and working together to actually help us to get to those solutions. So, kudos to you, Jen, and to Sid for spearheading this project, basically, to keep these scooters and bikes out of the river. Any other questions or comments? All right. Really quick, blazingly quick. We've received funding from DEC to expand our air quality monitoring across the Bronx. Currently, our office, Bronx River House, has 10 air quality sensors on all sides of the building, including the roof. We are measuring particulate matter and CO2. And really what we were interested in when we first installed these sensors was to look at the difference on either side of the building, the one that faces the Sheridan, the one that faces the river, see what differences we have. As you can imagine, we actually are seeing that the sensors that face the river report cleaner air quality than the ones that face traffic on the Sheridan Boulevard. No surprises there. What we are doing now is actually expanding this to 5 different locations throughout the watershed in the North Bronx and the South Bronx with our partners, and we'll be attaching these sensors to their properties to do the same monitoring. I don't have a picture of the dashboard, but the cool thing about this system is that it's very user-friendly. And so there's this very clean interface that allows you to look at the data in real time. And so as we expand this, we'll be able to basically investigate what air quality looks like in more locations in the Bronx, which just does not have enough of this information on hand. This map shows the prevalence of asthma in the Bronx. It's extremely high compared to the rest of the city. And so this is one location in particular where we really need to have this information and put it in the hands of the community so they can make the best decisions for themselves and their families. If you want to know more, you can email me. I don't want to get too into it right now. We are updating the Bronx River Intermunicipal Watershed Management Plan, which is a huge mouthful. We usually abbreviate to IWMP or just the Watershed Plan. This started out as a guiding document first produced in 2010, and it basically outlined a lot of priority projects for green infrastructure, habitat restoration, all this great stuff to be implemented on the Bronx River. The fish ladder at the 180th Street Dam came from the original plan, as well as I want to say, part of the Soundview salt marsh restoration or some other large habitat restoration on the river. So really important projects have come from this, and we're updating it now in the hopes that new projects will be coming in the future that will also benefit the river. One of the main focuses of the new plan is climate resiliency. So this wasn't something that people were talking about as much back in 2010 as we're talking about now. And so what we need is for the river to be more resilient to climate change, in particular flooding. And so we pulled basically representatives from every municipality along the river, going all the way up to White Plains, to the table. And a really fantastic conversation this summer. This is a Jamboard. We had them, write down problems they were finding and solutions, and also things that they had experienced that didn't work. And so with this knowledge, we're going to be pulling a consultant and going through this entire process again to make a new plan to outline new priority projects. the response we got from the elected officials in Westchester was really, really positive, really enthusiastic. So we're excited to continue working with them and see where this goes. There will be plenty of opportunities for public input throughout this process. We'll be holding town halls both in the Bronx and Westchester County. So we encourage you, if you are interested, to show up when those events are planned. We'll let you know. And if you have concerns, please bring them. Really quick upcoming events. Next Saturday is International Coastal Cleanup 2022. This is a global event that is led by the Ocean Conservancy, which is focusing on plastic waste and marine debris. And so this is an event that unites all coastal communities around the world. And the Bronx River Alliance always participates in this event because, as you know, the Bronx River does empty out basically into the Atlantic Ocean. So this event is free for everyone, but there's a limited number of signups, I think. And I don't know if we're at capacity, but you can definitely check our website and go to the link and see if there's any spaces left. If you're interested in participating, we will be providing all materials on that morning. And so if there's room for you, please come through and help us keep the shoreline and town view clean. We also have a bird walk coming up. So on October 8th, we'll be partnering with NYC Audubon. October 8th is World Migratory Bird Day, which I didn't know until this year. But it's a day to recognize migratory species and their significance to the ecosystems around the world. And also the amount of trouble that these species are in, from pollution, habitat loss, and skyscrapers, unfortunately. New York City, sadly, is a big bird killer. As these birds fly through every year, a lot of them collide with buildings because the glass confuses them. And we leave our lights on at night, and so all these skyscrapers remain lit up all night long, and that really disorients these creatures, and they end up crashing into them. Most of them do not survive these impacts. Anyway, all that is to say that it's really, really special to be recognizing these species. And I don't think we've had a bird walk for a really long time. And so we're excited to be hosting this event and co-leading it with NYC Audubon. It's open to the public if you're interested, and you can make it down to River House on Saturday morning, October 8th. We'd love to have you there. We'll have binoculars available, and hopefully we'll see some cool birds. And the last major event that I want to talk about tonight, just really quickly, is our Bronx River Showcase. And so if you've been to any of our previous open houses this year or last year, it's a really amazing day. We kind of show off the different things that we do, from canoeing to pop-up bike repairs. We have partners come and do soil testing and give out fresh produce to the community. We have lots of different kid-friendly activities and stuff. We've done watershed models, we've done art making activities and whatnot. And this fall, we will be showcasing all of this at Shoelace Park. So we haven't been giving as much love to the North Bronx as much as we have in previous years. And so we chose Shoelace because it will bring these events to our communities up north. And we're excited to be able to engage them and also to be able to show off what is a really special part of the river. Shoelace Park was the original roadbed for the Bronx River Parkway before it moved to the western side of the river. And so it's a very unique space that's been reclaimed. It's been beautified recently with the Shoelace Park master plan. And it's a gorgeous park. And so we're excited to be able to show it off on that day. If you're able to come through on October 29th from 12 to 4, we hope to see you there. And last but not least, of course, you can always reach out to me if you're interested in water quality monitoring, project waste, or oyster monitoring. We do partner with the Billion Oyster Project, New Jersey City University, New York, New Jersey Baykeeper, to do oyster monitoring down in Soundview Park. And so if any of these things interest you, or if you know of someone who might be interested in these activities, please send me an email. Okay, so I always try to leave a little bit of time at the end of the meeting for an open discussion in case folks have questions or things they are curious about. So this is a good time if you would like to unmute or put something in the chat. Let us know about a question you have or a concern you might have or something that you want to see the ECO team do in 2023. And that could be anything, right? Like we have discussed doing a movie watching or doing some kind of activity. And this is kind of where the Bronx River Eco Team walks came from. So Elliot and I tried to plan out a summer full of wonderful walks along the river. Mixed success. We had fun anyway. And I'm going to call the bird walk part of one of those walks. We'd love to have eco team representatives there on that day if you can come out. But yeah, any questions, comments, concerns, curiosities?
One thing I'll just add to that too, there's an event called City of Forest Day, which is part of this cooperative called Forest for All NYC. But it's on October 15th, and there'll be free events in forested natural areas all throughout the city. And one of those will be a tour of the Thane Family Forest, a natural history tour that we'll be doing at the garden. So definitely look for it when it all is made available. Again, Forest for All NYC. If you just Google that, you'll find it. And something that so that event for us will be free for all Bronx residents. But something I don't know if everyone is aware of is that the garden, I think just over the summer, is grounds access is now free for all Bronx residents. So just something to keep in mind and spread the word if you know people that don't know.
Thanks for that, Elliot. Will you be leading the tour on the 15th?
Yes.
Yes. Cool.
I kind of feel like this is a loaded question, and I'm not sure if you're able to know the future. Just like I feel like the fish kill was very alarming, and we don't know exactly what it was, but you know, the dip in oxygen and them gasping for air, like, you know, really tells kind of what happened. You might not be able to answer this, but like I feel like sometimes like what happens in Mother Nature and the water kind of mimics what can happen to us. Is there any possibility that, you know, doing air quality testing, that the oxygen could get so low, like the water, that it could kill people potentially?
Are you planning on writing a horror movie, Jen?
Right? It sounds like a horror movie. It's just really disheartening and alarming. And I'm like, a lot of what happens to wildlife could happen to us. Yep. So I'm just like, yeah. Thinking, yeah.
Yeah, the one thing that we have going for us that fish don't, unfortunately, is that water bodies are more sort of closed systems than open air on land. And so there's not as much interaction and movement of fluids, right? It's more contained. So if there was like a horrible gas leak, for example, it could be really concentrated in a small area, but it would probably dissipate fairly quickly. But we can look at history that shows us that actual really terrible smog events have killed people, and still do kill people all the time. We don't have them so often in New York City, thankfully, but we could. And when we have temperature inversions in the atmosphere, so normally you have this nice mixing of the atmosphere because warm air rises and cool air sinks, and it creates this constant cycling. Sometimes that flips, right? And so what you end up having is this like dome that sits over a populated area. And that's usually when people start to get sick and die. And we are concerned about that as climate change makes the weather weird and makes smog worse and makes ozone worse. And so it's definitely something that we should be keeping in mind, especially in vulnerable communities like a lot of the Bronx. So it's a good question. I don't really have a solid answer for you. I don't think that we could have a massive people die off the way we have fish kills on the river. And I'll leave you with that. I don't think it's going to happen that same way. I don't think we need to be as worried.
Yeah, I just figured just wanted, like, it's something that came to mind. But yeah, it's a loaded question, so I figure you wouldn't, no one really.
It's a good question. It's a very good question.
Thank you.
The one thing I do think about is like the potential, this is all, you know, it could be potentially exacerbated due to changes in climate. And you know, this is just one occurrence that happened this summer, so it's hard to tell whether or not this is something that will reoccur. But you know, what I question looking at everything is, were we just in such a stressed situation already because of such a unique summer that we had, that then any type of input just tipped it over. So that's, yeah, but I think that those impacts aren't just on wildlife, but impacts in climate will impact us as well, just as Christian said. But we'll see. We'll have to see.
It's definitely an interesting case study, to say the least. Any other questions or topics of interest, or things you might want the eco team to be engaged in next year?
Let's put Christian to work.
Put me to work. What am I doing now?
No, I know. Talk about what is it? The trash wheel and
Yeah, so I guess that's a thing we could talk about really briefly. There was a feasibility study done a number of years ago. Do folks know about Mr. Trash Wheel? Mr. Trash Wheel is a solar powered, basically like paddle boat, essentially, that exists in Baltimore Harbor. And he kind of eats trash. The paddle turns a conveyor belt. The conveyor belt is attached to the water surface. It pulls up garbage out of the water, dumps it into a dumpster. When he's full, he gets towed away and emptied, and then brought back. And he's keeping Baltimore Harbor clean, and people really, really like him. And we kind of want a Mr. Trash Wheel on the Bronx River. And we've done feasibility studies that suggest that the trash wheel would work here, but the problem is we don't know who could maintain it. The Bronx River Lions definitely could not. We don't have the capacity. And unfortunately, DEP doesn't really think they have the capacity either. It's a unique responsibility to take care of a trash wheel. But we are resurfacing conversations now because we do think it would be helpful for the river. And so I guess watch this space is all I can say right now, but we're trying.
It's mobile. It moves around.
It is stationary when it's eating the
Okay.
garbage, but it does get towed, right? So it gets moved.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
thinking of like boats I've seen that go around and. Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's a boat, right? It is a floating boat, but it remains stationary while it's functioning.
I have told Maggie that I think how they remove trash from the boom is not unlike the trash wheel.
Yeah.
And that not having maintenance is not accurate, or not necessarily accurate. It probably means like they're just saying no without necessarily like understanding that these are possibly two very analogous things. But I have it on good authority that there might be somebody out cleaning the boom tomorrow if somebody wants to go investigate.
Okay. I will say that they only clean out the boom once a month, whereas if the trash wheel is continuously eating the garbage,
yeah,
the difference is that the boom wouldn't be full all the time. You know?
But from the trash wheel still has to get sorted by someone.
I don't think it gets sorted, but Mr. Trash Wheel has a camera, so you can look at what's being removed. Whereas the DEP stuff, we don't really know exactly what's coming out of that boom. A lot of it is woody debris, and a lot of it is like single-use plastic items from what we can see from the shore. But Mr. Trash Wheel would probably give us a little bit closer look at what's actually floating in that boom that we can't see. It's an idea. And it's solar powered, so it's a nice engagement piece to talk to the community about renewable energy and stewardship.
Well, definitely keep us in the loop. I think it's interesting. I mean, we are a natural settling point for a lot of things on the river, so we get a lot of trash along the banks. So
Yeah.
anything to help with that would be great.
Yeah. Behavior changes would be a big one. Anybody who knows someone who's good at community-based social marketing, let us know. Any parting thoughts, folks? Thank you all for sticking on so long. I know these meetings do go a little later than some of the other team meetings, and we really appreciate you being here to be a part of these conversations. If not, I guess I'll let Elliot go home. Are you home or are you still at the garden?
No, I'm still at the garden.
I had a feeling. Go home.
I will. See you, everyone.
Thanks all for being here.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Christian. Right.
I'm staying on just so I can read the comments because I didn't get to look at them.
No, you can save them if you want.
Oh, I can save them.
I can also try to copy and paste them all into the.
No,
You
it's
can stop
okay.
recording.
When I stop recording, I know it gets saved in a chat document. I can just check that.
Okay.
All right, cool. Thanks, Dan. Me. See you tomorrow.
Yeah.